Hey, what's going on, Paul? Yeah, this is Peter, town planner. We're still rolling. We just gotta go through one more hearing and then a couple items. So we were just taking a quick 5-minute break.
Came back and everyone's gone.
Peter, we don't have any minutes to review for today, do we?
No, we do not.
Okay.
No, you know what? I
okay.
have I got some earlier in the week, and I was working with our the person that does the minutes, and so she's we're a little bit behind, but she's working on them. And
No worries. I just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
so I knew
no.
what was happening. Yeah.
no,
all
the
good.
other things that we did send out with the decisions for excuse me, McDonald's 225 Pond Street, and then the Albert Red Drive. So
All right, so Kevin, are you back?
Sorry, yes, I am.
All right, Kevin's back. All right, so we are going to not reopen, but we're back. Next on our agenda is item number D, 10 to 60 Main Street permit and site plan review. The last time we talked about this project, we were focusing on environmental issues, and the time before that, we had an in-person design meeting. So where are we? What are we talking about today is my question.
so just to jump in, Peter Max,
Yep,
town
sure.
planner. I've spoken with the applicant, and I think we tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, we are looking to finish up not finish up, but kind of draw some conclusions to the conversation about environmental, just so we're all on the same page. And then we are looking to move back on to the building in the site, and the layout, and just continue on with our conversation. So I know Rich is on tonight with George Connors and George Campbell, who is part of his team. I do want to make note that I did re-advertise the public hearing because Deepa has fallen off. She's missed actually 2 meetings. However, Deepa missed tonight's meeting, so we do not have to reopen. We are not reopening any new public hearing. We are continuing on with the public hearing that was underway. Because Deepa now has missed 3 meetings. She will not be a voting member of this board as we continue on. So with that said, I think it was more of a, it was really a, it was just more of a, it was just a administrative matter, to tell you the truth. So I did it in correlation with Rich, Mr. Gordon, the owner of the property. But once Deepa alerted me that she was not available to make it tonight, I think we need to make therefore she doesn't really become a voting member. She loses her voting member.
So are we
or
now,
opportunity.
so are we now a 4-member board for the purpose of this project?
No, we're 5 with Kevin.
5 with Kevin.
So.
Mhm.
So you're saying although we were 5, 1 is essentially out because she was not there, but Kevin can fill that 5th spot.
Correct.
That's how you're.
Mhm.
Just a weird question, Peter. Does the in-person meeting that you
So
folks
you're
held-
allowed to miss 1 meeting, Kevin.
Okay, but there's no tape of that one for me to review.
There's minutes that we'll
Okay.
have to provide minutes, and we'll
Okay,
have to
just wanted
read
to
it.
make sure I'm following whatever rule I need
Yeah.
to.
Nope, I'm taking care of it on the back end. But just as an administrative matter, I just want to clarify that with everybody. So, but with that said, and if there's no more questions, I think it's time we hand it to Mr. Gordon, and he can go and introduce us to his application team.
Thanks, Peter. Nice to see you guys all again. So I guess, as Peter said, we're here to sort of hopefully put to wraps the environmental questions and aspects of the job. So we do have George Connors here with us, and George Campbell. George is really more civil, but George Campbell is here to answer any more civil environmental questions. And then, if we turn this back over to the building and that discussion, Scott is also here with us as well tonight. So I guess I would really turn it back to the board and say, what questions are there still out there, and where would you like to go with this from here?
I think from where I stand, I'm remote and I did not bring those notes with me, unfortunately. But I think that the general understanding we got going over it, the process fairly rigorously last time, made us understand the process. And it seemed, at least from my point of view, that all regulations, all the paths that we're supposed to be following, that you're supposed to be following for this site are being followed. In working with the various, the EPA, the various agencies that we need to work with and following everything that needs to be followed. And I would expect that to continue. That doesn't, to me, mean that other questions might not come up in the future or other, but it's just kind of a general understanding that everything is being followed. All regulations are being met or will be met throughout the process. Does anyone else on the planning board have comments about that or their general sense of how they feel about that?
I do. I'm going to bring it up because I did it the very, very, very first time this project's were introduced, and last time is the timing of going to the Conservation Commission. I believe last time they were on, they said there was an extensive report that was being prepared that was going, but I don't know if that is or where that stands. And I think there's a lot of environmental issues, not specifically Nyanza. We know there's a river there. We know there's setbacks from rivers, all those things. So I want to make sure they're addressed. And I think the floodplain may fall under this board still. No one's answered that from the first meeting yet, but there's other things that will have to go to conservation. But it does affect our decisions about the project, depending on those decisions.
Yeah, and absolutely. And that's why I'm saying, just because I feel like I understand the process that we're going through, and I have a confidence that the project is following every regulation and every process that they need to follow, doesn't mean that we don't have other questions that will come up with conservation, or even when we get a design on this project, that there might not be things that need to change based on that design, and more questions we might have based on that design. I'm not sure. So, I agree, Kate. And so where is the process with the Conservation Commission? Has that begun? Is complete?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Kate and Trish. And actually, I'll defer that to George Connors, and you can bring us up to date on where we're at with our application.
The application for conservation is going to be filed probably next week. We had our review from the ecological people sent over today, and I have not reviewed it, but I will before it's submitted, and should be sometime next week. It involves a bit of work in the floodplain, which we don't believe is jurisdictional. We have ORAD on that, order of resource area delineation. The river zone has been determined, and maybe I can go to share screen and have the drawings up. Is that possible, Peter?
Peter, you're muted.
3 years now. George, I will make you co-host.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's.
I can't hear George Connors. Can everyone else?
Yeah, he seems to be frozen or something.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so this is our site.
Oh,
Building is, hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, but your screen is buzzing.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. I live in Boondock. Get it now?
We can hear you, yes, and you're sharing your screen.
All right,
So
so
please
here's our
continue.
river. And along this particular location here, we have a wall that has been surrounding this site since it was built in the 1800s. And it is something that separates the site, which is low, it's about 10 feet below the street, from the river. The river's a little bit lower than that, and the floodplain comes through here. We can get to that in a minute, but basically the river zone ends at this wall because this is a historic mill complex, and under 310 CMR 1058, it is exempt from the Rivers Protection Act as an active historic mill site. All the work that will take place inside this wall system is exempt. And therefore, our only issues with respect to conservation on this site is the drainage work. Conservation will have jurisdiction over under a notice of intent to make sure that we don't impact the river. And for our stormwater is going to be exempted as well, to the extent that it's basically just the same type of system that's out there, but with some formalized piping. The entire site from the front of the building to the back is dipping down fairly low. And in this whole complex, there's only 2 catch basins. One someplace in here, and there's another someplace in this parking lot. And then whatever they do, we're not really sure. We think they go into the ground, but not a lot of capacity. We know they don't come out. The site has a pump station at this location, and what it did is it pumped water during storms into the river. At some point in time, we had a meeting with the selectmen, I believe, big meeting with many groups. And one of the members was a former policeman and indicated that some big storm back in the 50s or 60s had ponded about 2 feet of water in the back of this location. Kind of believe that. I think that makes all sorts of sense. But since that point in time, somebody's punched a couple of holes in the wall so water can go out towards the stream or the river. Those obviously are some sort of work that took place probably well after the 70s. We did work for Gordon Mindick, who owned this building before Rich Gordon, out there for a variety of things, including some hydro work for their electric generation. And those weren't there at the time. So basically, the site is a constrained site, contained site that has no connection to the river, and stormwater would be pumped out of a pump system that was over here. We are now, because we're formalizing this, we're going to have people walking by there. We are formalizing with this yellow line of drainage structures, and they will come to a system that will be here. That is going to be a updated stormwater system, and it will be pumping water out. It'll contain different sorts of pumps, have emergency generator, and it will take water out of the site, discharge it, we hope, to this particular location here. The reason we chose that, as opposed to it simply going off the sluice into the river, is because this used to be a mill race through here. It's been blocked off many years ago. And now this is more or less a very low volume water flow. There's some street drainage that comes into it. There's probably some underground drainage that comes into it. But if we discharge here, it's going to help to move the water through here. It is very tanned colored water. There's probably iron bacterium growing in it because of its stagnant condition. So we think that'll make a huge difference to this. Site from, as I said, the front of the building is down low. So we'll be capturing water for the whole site and in the parking areas through here and taking it to that system. The front of the building, the town has just rebuilt this section of street and observed the existing drainage as shown in the BSC plans. So our site has basically the same amount of impervious, and it's not going to change. Might be a little bit of landscaping planters there, which would reduce it. The front section of the site simply relies on the existing drainage that's up front on the existing street. With respect to stormwater, we'll be asking for waivers for cleansing the stormwater, and it's not being recharged into the ground, obviously because of the AUL, as Mr. Campbell discussed back at some point in time. And under your regulations, on the town stormwater bylaw regulations, waivers are allowable if there's a federal, state, or local statute or regulation that would require it. Here we have the contingency plan, mass contingency plan, and as it's implemented for the storm, the pollution in the ground and the plume. The second aspect of that is an overriding public interest. We don't want to disturb the plume. We don't want to change its movements or its composition, whether adding water to it to dilute it or anything. So we would meet that, and then it wouldn't be inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the stormwater bylaw, which is really make the systems more environmentally friendly, such as in recharging groundwater. You have base flow in streams and rivers, which has diminished over the years. So the intent and purpose would be to, in this instance, simply do stormwater cleansing, and that takes place in some storm scepters, which clean the water, and the deep sump gas trap catch basins, which we will put in over the in a formalized manner, as opposed to the two existing catch basins, which again, we don't know where they go. They will be removed. So our drainage system is basically as we show. And now have a issue on sewer and water. What we're doing for water for the particular site is we're connecting to the street here, and we're running a loop parallel to it and connecting back in. So we'll feed from both directions, and then we'll be able to feed into each individual building with both a water domestic and a water fire protection service, and have the ability to have redundancy in that particular system. We've asked the town since February 2020 for information on the water main, and we've not gotten that yet. However, we know that there's a substantial pipe out there. We had a technical review meeting in 2020. I was assured that the pipe had recently been relined, and it was enough capacity for this particular project at 250 units, as we were talking about it at that time. So it's just a matter of the fire engineers, when we get ready to build this building, or just before that, do a fire flow test on the water system and design our pipe size and the ability for it to both feed domestic and the high volume, high pressure water for fire protection. So we know where it goes. We know how to put it in. We know that it's not in the plume in the soil that's contaminated, because up in that area, it's about 10 feet higher than in the back area, and the groundwater in the back area is a couple feet below ground. So this particular water line will not be in the groundwater table. With respect to...
So just to interrupt just a minute here so these systems that you're describing, obviously some having to do with the wall are historic features that are, the results aren't going to change no matter what the design of the project actually is. Do the things that you are talking about with the catch basins, with the water supplies, those are flexible so that they will change as the building design potentially changes, as that was the last design discussion we had on this building, and we're waiting to kind of see where the design of the building may be at this point, which may not look like this drawing anymore. Is that right?
I'm not sure what the building's going to look like. I am sure that this particular water line that we're showing is an appropriate design that would allow for it to connect into the building, whatever size it be determined based on the fire flow test of existing water line and what the fire engineer decides he needs for internal plumbing. So, yes, this is.
So I guess that's the question about going to conservation as well, is that, is that discussion, I assume that then would be a fairly preliminary discussion about the complex aspects of this site and not necessarily getting approval for a plan that does not yet exist, at least not from the planning board's perspective.
Can you say that one more time a little differently?
Well, prior to the last meeting online of the planning board, which was focused on environmental issues solely, right, in that process.
Yep.
Prior to that, I believe it was in the first week of November, which is quite a long time ago now. We had an in-person design meeting with Scott Richardson. Rich Gordon joined us by phone, where we actually were drawing things, talking about the design, talking about possibilities, as this has come up in the other meetings that we had on this project. So that to me tells, and we haven't seen the project since. We haven't seen any of the results of those conversations. So I assume anything we're talking about here in terms of Conservation Commission, in terms of understanding what's happening on the site, is all as the environmental information, it's all information we'll use as we go forward, but not necessarily attached to this exact plan. Because we have not seen the results of that design meeting yet. We have seen nothing related to that.
Is the plan changing?
Well, we kind of hope so, based on the design meeting we had in person in the beginning of November. So we've been kind of waiting to see what is happening with this project. We assumed that process was in process, and we thought maybe we would hear something about that tonight. So that's where we are. We haven't heard any of the results of that meeting yet.
Well, okay, this is based on this particular plan. The drainage lines in the back, you see, is yellow. If they have to move a little bit, we've calculated the amount of water that would go into those catch basins. And it's really just a hydraulic analysis that would change. The typical site plan is usually one that is a site that is being developed. This is already developed. It's already impervious in totality. So we have those volumes. We don't increase runoff from this. So again, it's just a matter of the hydraulics of these drain lines. And if they have to move, that's fairly easy to do. In the front, we pick up the water on each end of the site, and we loop it in so that the individual water services and fire services anywhere off this particular line to any building behind it. We then had sewer come out at two locations. One was here into the existing manhole, and another was here, and there would be internal plumbing in these buildings to bring one or two or three into this line and out, or one or two into this line and out. So we have minimum amounts of penetration into the street. Again, those could move. If there were a building to shift a little bit, this particular line could shift in that direction. Again, this front section is about 10 feet higher than the rear. It's about 12 feet above water table. So any of this infrastructure work that would take place would be outside of that plume or the groundwater. In terms of a building changing, well, we wouldn't have much analysis whatsoever, because again, the entire site is what it is now with respect to impervious surface. No increase in runoff at all.
Right, understood.
Any other questions I can answer on this?
Other questions for the board on this? Like I said, I consider it kind of general information at this point.
You mentioned waivers for the stormwater and treatment of it. Would the storm scepter meet the the treatment requirements, or there would be a waiver beyond that?
There'd be a waiver beyond that because we simply can't take care of all of it. Again, under your stormwater regulations, what conservation deals with, we will be improving the situation, A, and secondly, we will be working in a historic mill. So between the two different aspects of wetlands regulations, we'd be able to get those waivers.
And is local Concom the approving agency, I guess, to discharge into that river, or does that need to go further to DEP or EPA?
We'll file for a notice of intent. We already have discharge this location. That's our historic discharge point. Because that system there has been historic, then the same system. We chose to come over here for a couple of reasons. One is, and let me go to another drawing. Here is our pump house in the back. You can see the pump inside it. And there is the sluice. There's the wall, pumps here. This is a wooden sluice that simply goes over the wall and dumps water into the back in the river. We think that solution we've come up with into that mill race is a better one. However, this would be existing and we could implement it if the other solution wasn't thought to be acceptable. Again, the pump, that's the exhaust pipe for it. That's a different side. And then the wet well under here that the pump has a pipe that goes down into and pumps it out. So that really is the way the system has been designed and operated for many years, up until the time they punched holes in the wall. And that as a historic system that we could re-implement with that type of discharge. I don't think that's.
I have a question on that, if you can clarify for me. So understanding that, yeah, historically the water has been kind of dumped back onto the river, right? And you are proposing to do the same through different means, as I understand it, through the canal, the channel that runs through the site.
Yeah, but we're going to take it in a pipe.
Yeah, no, I understand that. No, my question is, what are the regulations or what kind of treatment? Because you're going to salt all these, and I assume it's being salted during the winters today. But is there any regulations of what treatment you have to do to that water so that you don't dump all that salt into the river, or how does that work?
No, the only thing we have to do is take out a certain percentage of total suspended solids. The theory is that the pollutants absorb to granular particles like sands and silts. So the bottom of the catch basin will capture those, and we'll remove those from time to time with a Vector truck. The catch basins will have hoods on them, gas traps, so any oil sheens would not make it into discharge into the river. And
So you're not treating the water before the river. You're just basically maintaining the pits by picking up and
no,
vacuuming those debris.
let me finish. Then we have a couple of storm scepters, which then do actual treatment under the EP regulations. So between taking out the sediments, the same accumulated with the Vector trucks out of all the catch basins, we remove what we call total suspended solids. And those total suspended solids have the pollutants that adhere to them. So that's the first element of treatment. And then the second element is the storm scepters, which are vortex type manholes, and they swim the water around and they deposit even more of the sediments and particulates and let cleaner water go out. But no, we don't have a formal treatment system to take sodium chloride out of the water.
Okay.
So that is pretty much it on site. I don't know with whether we're going to file a notice of intent if this isn't the building. That particular plan needs to demonstrate enough information so that an order of conditions can issue for the implementation and construction of our systems and our work.
So Rich, can you describe what has been happening with the project since our in-person design meeting in the first week of November?
So I think the big thing that came out of that is there was a lot of discussion about, what other design could be done. There was a lot of drawings that were done. And at the end of the day, it really appeared to all of us that due to the constraints that we have out there, there's not a lot of changes that can be done. So I think Scott has some, thoughts on that, and I'd like him to chime in here.
Sure. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I guess we can still say Happy New Year. So I did reply back to, I think, to Peter on some of the summary from that meeting. And so I could just run through what we heard and what we discussed and what the potential for consideration for those commentaries and review. So one of the concepts was creating a central building massing and entering the site and having kind of a courtyard effect across the whole site or something along those lines versus the current linear building schemes and potentially recessing the buildings from Main Street. So the other concept was the relocation of the entrance of the site from where we are proposing it on your essentially between buildings 40 and 50, so that it is in the controlled intersection. So the reason we need to maintain that controlled intersection, obviously, is for the controlled access to and from the site and up and down Pleasant Street for the traffic light signalization that's there. Also, the bylaws do require to have your buildings on the street and a maximum 15-foot setback from the street. We are looking to have number 50 set back a little bit more so that we can create that front patio area along Main Street. So from the standpoint of circulation and access and safety, kind of the arrangement that we have is what works for all of those aspects. There was commentary about building 34 to maintain that building and redevelop it. Again, as some of you have been through that building, it is about 50 feet wide and 104 feet long. And it's, as you have observed, it's just an open shell with a mansard roof at the first floor level, which then descends down into the lower level. So you have about 24 feet or so of open space. There's no floor structure in there. And again, it doesn't lend itself to being renovated for apartment use. Basically 10 and 20 are 60 feet wide, which just about works for apartment layouts. And the three new buildings are 66 feet wide, which again works better for a double loaded corridor for the apartments. Again, we don't see any value in trying to utilize 34 in that it really has no applicable features for being renovated. There was comment about developing more commercial space at 10 and 20. And so we are open to actually doing that essentially in the lower levels. We're in discussions about that. So that may happen instead of parking under, again, we already added commercial space to the lower level of 10, and we may in fact do the same to number 20. So there would be additional commercial space available in that lower level. There was comments about adding a floor to both 10 and 20. As we all know, these are the most iconic historic buildings that have good presence on the street and as you come around the corner, and are adaptable to the uses that we're talking about. Number 20 is approximately 32 feet to the top of the roof. I'm sorry, so that's currently number 30, which we're renaming 20. So we cannot add another floor under your zoning bylaws, which max out at 35 feet. Number 10 is about 25 feet to the top of the roof, and the existing mansard roof system is cathedraled inside. And so we were looking at that being a really nice feature for the apartments that are going to be on that top floor. And again, given the height of that, trying to add another floor to that building, again, is not in keeping with the preservation and renovation of the building, and also would not be almost feasible given the height of the existing building. There was commentary about developing more green space and coordinating with the mill pond and the park access. And we are very interested in further discussions regarding that aspect. We are going to be generating kind of more overall site plan, outlining those areas that could be discussed for additional park spaces and green spaces for consideration. Again, the river walk that we've been kind of chatting about and really focusing on, that runs around the back of the property. As George mentioned, we have that retaining wall that we're going to be building adjacent to this river walk, so that it connects, again, Main Street on the south side, all around the back of the property, and connects over to the Mill Pond Park area there. There was some discussion about breaking up the Main Street facades and have the buildings appear more like mill housing. I would suggest that the various elevations of the buildings do look like mill housing, and that we're looking at having the individual windows and the 10-foot spacing of windows, which are predominant on the first two buildings that have windows, and also predominant in most mill buildings in Massachusetts. We have varied the roof lines with the gables and shed dormers and canopy roofs, but we'll look a little more closely at the elevations to see what else we might be able to incorporate to have a little more variety there. There was commentary about reinforcing the entries to the Myrtle Street parking area and to Main Street. And I just wanted to reiterate that we do incorporate the iconic stone element at the Myrtle Street entrance to demarcate that and have it as a reminiscence of the stone sluice or pump house there. And then on the building 50, we have again incorporated a stone tower at the south end of number 50, adjacent to the driveway and adjacent to the proposed patio area, or hopefully the restaurant that goes in there, to again kind of anchor those two elements, those two entrances with again these granite tower elements.
So to just to summarize,
Yeah.
I mean, as we're still looking at the same site plan with no new anything, basically the result is that nothing is changing. Is that right?
So the basic massing of the buildings and the basic configuration of the buildings is remaining as designed. That is correct. And incorporating the 200 units and about will actually be a little more than 30,000 square feet of commercial space. I don't have a final calculation on that as we're entering more commercial space on the second building on 20.
I'm going to hold this here and open it up to comments from the planning board. I think I find that disappointing. If I had seen like a lot of sketches where, you know, I find it disappointing that that's just after over 2 months, that's just the answer, that this is it, nothing can be changed, we can't move anything around, this is it, this is the only solution that works for this site. I find that a little strange. Any other comments from the board?
I mean, I have to say, I keep thinking like it's 11 o'clock at night. I want to be kind of cautious in my commentary here, but I certainly agree with everything Trisha's saying. And I do wonder if we need to start thinking outside the box. I know this has been a frustrating process for me and for others in the planning board by the sound of what Trisha's comments are. And I'm sure it's frustrating for the applicant as well. And I've heard those frustrations in our meetings, right? Where there's the sense of we're kind of hitting our heads against the wall mutually. And I kind of wonder if we need to start thinking outside the box. And some of my ideas are, I feel like we need to kind of bring some new energy into this discussion. I wonder if there are resources we have not utilized in our community, whether it's some creative think tanks, organizations, Framingham State students, anybody who can come in and give us a different view of this, because I think at this point, it's not fair to ask the architects on our planning board to try to continue to make the exact same points we've made over and over and over again. And it doesn't seem fair anymore to demand the same things from the developer who's unwilling to make any changes. So I feel like we're wasting our time and we need some new energy. That's my comment.
I would only add that I agree with Trisha. I think we've been looking at this project for, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 months now, since the very beginning, something like that. And the answer seems to be the same. So Mike, I'm not going to add any other comments because I would just repeat myself. I think the site, how the site and the buildings address the entry point of the town and the downtown, I just don't see it. I see all these kind of alleyway composition, and I don't know. In my view, all I can say is that alleyways don't promote the best in human behavior. So I have concerns, and it's disappointing that simply no, this is what it is. I would have the same objections, so I'm not going to repeat them.
And I wonder, with a lot of respect for what we've heard from, from Scott, it's a no offense, Scott, at all, but I kind of feel like we keep having the same discussion over and over again. And I do wonder if it's almost like when you go to the doctor and you get an opinion over and over and over again, and the patient is not following the advice, and the doctor keeps giving the same input, you do need a second opinion at some point. And I wonder, Rich, if you're open to that. I feel like I, as a planning board member, need to really believe that no change is happening. I mean, that no change is possible. And I'm having a hard time believing it. I kind of want a second opinion. No offense to Scott.
Yeah, I'm not sure where we go from here. I think it, given where the board has always been on this, it seems like it would be a difficult thing to go through our criteria and say, yep, this is it. This is the best thing for Ashland.
Trisha, quick question.
Please.
Like a technical question. So if we've had several meetings, we've expressed our comments, and the proponent is expressing their position. If nothing else is going to be added, can we just vote on this?
Peter?
That's what it would come down to. Theoretically, Marcelo, yes. I
mean, it's not a by right project, Marcelo. We do have more flexibility under this particular review. So
yeah, but
we can vote anytime. And I mean, what I'm suggesting is at some point, I'd like to give it a second look, and I'm just not feeling like we're getting it.
Well,
I'm not giving up.
I get that, but I'm just saying, if nothing's going to change, let's say, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think nothing's going to change, right? I think
then we can just vote.
Stalemate. Correct. The planning board has to vote on the application. There's special permits. Obviously, there's special permits being applied for this further development, along with site plan and design review. This application we haven't even sent to design review at this point, right? We're still going through this process. And so that's where we kind of stand. And it hasn't gone to design review as typical projects of this mass and scale would. But the last time we talked about design was back in November. We had our meeting in December focusing on environmental, and we're back here at this point in January. And with the other big projects going on, we were here in this case about once a month. But yes, much so theoretically, if there was this is what we have, vote on it, then yes, we would have the planning board could therefore vote on that process.
I mean, my
Okay,
thought
so
is
we'll-
there's no point going to design review if we as a planning board are not in consensus or in agreement as to what where we are. I'm not hearing any consensus on the planning board that we're in tune with this project. We seem to have a disconnect between the planning
No,
board.
I agree with that. And
So there's
and-
nothing for me, there's nothing to do with design review. Like, can
Yeah,
we in
no,
theory vote
that's
on
off the table, Anna. It's not going
Yeah.
to design review.
Yeah.
So,
So I
I
would
have a
just say,
question.
go ahead, Kate.
I just have a question about timing because I think the timing about this application, we also have to keep in mind because you could end up with approval on timing. So I don't know where that stands. I asked Peter, but I don't think I got a response on that.
So for the special permits, we've continued those. And the applicant's been very cooperative regarding continuances on the special permit, the application site plan review process. And
So what's
I
the
think-
benefit? What is the benefit to continue if we're not making progress? I think at some point we need to take a vote.
Well, but that's what I was getting at. So if nothing's gonna change and we're not gonna be able to add anything fruitful, just in the sake for the sake of transparency, if we were to vote right now, I would vote against this application.
And I mean, I would as well. So for what it's worth, I'm starting to hit my head against the wall. And again, it's 11. And so I'm trying to be cognizant of that. But I do wonder if we need to either take a vote or do a kind of a final intervention of some kind that's creative and out of the box. Because I feel frustration on both sides. I can see it on Scott's expression right now. And I just think we need something else, either a vote or something serious needs to change.
I guess I would recommend that, like you said, Anna, it is 11 o'clock and that I would recommend that we have one more continuance on this and that the applicant realizes the seriousness of the board about this proposal and the lack of ability to adjust it in any way, right? In any way at all. And how frustrating that is and what ideas they might have to, once that sinks in to kind of go forward or to try something else. I just don't think this is working for the board.
Yeah, I think we're hearing that.
Yeah, so, and if it is what it is, if this is the only thing that can be done at this time and there is nothing else then that can be done, then maybe it's just not the right time for this project. So.
And I'll add two things. One is our community is undergoing a comprehensive plan process. I think we as a community are doing a lot of thinking about our future. As you know, there's other projects in the area that frankly are taking a slightly different approach. And we have found them to be more flexible. Maybe the timing is not quite right. And that's one thought. And I don't know if the applicant would want to step back, withdraw the application and sort of rethink this, or if there's a way, like I said, almost like an intervention approach where, maybe it's time for a second opinion, bring in a different perspective, someone you have not worked with before, and show us that there's truly no other way, because we're not seeing it.
Yeah, we will review in more detail, obviously the comments that have been made, and kind of regroup. We are obviously have the implementation of the size and scope and scale of a project that we believe is well designed, will greatly enhance the downtown and augment and respond to what's been trying to be done in the downtown to really, again, continue the growth and forward thinking of the town. But that being said, Trish, I did share my notes with you that I guess hadn't been forwarded to you and Marcello or whoever and others. So I think that's probably worth sharing to the board, because it does spell out, while we understand and appreciate the comments and concepts, we have already been through a lot of that design intent and some of the concepts that we reviewed with Marcello and with you. We have already vetted, and again, for a variety of reasons, have come to this scheme. However, we know that design is an iterative process, and we will, obviously take another look at all the input and the constraints and see what we can come up with.
Yeah, I would say.
I
Oh,
think
go
that's
ahead,
a fair way to put it, Scott. And we are looking for what works best for the town and to fit in with the overall. I mean, we have been through this for a very long time, and Trish, especially you, have been part of it since. I mean, we're going on almost 3 years, and we've changed designs many times along the way. And where we're at now really comes from what we've heard from everybody, from the board and from the town and from select board and from so many people. Granted, in November, there was a meeting that you guys got out and sketched out a whole bunch of stuff. And, quite frankly, those ideas didn't fit for one reason or another. So, Scott has commented on every single thing that was brought up at that meeting. I certainly am not going to sit here and say that we're not open to trying to make this work. I mean, we're very vested here at this point and want to make it work. I'm not sure how we can completely recreate the wheel. There's a lot of constraints on it. And we do have to be a certain size to make it work. And, we're trying to provide a housing development with 25% affordable and giving back green space to the town. And there's just so much good here. It's frustrating, yes, that the focus is completely on the fact that we can't do a major redesign, but that's very difficult to do right now at this point. However, in fairness, and to Anna's point, it's late, everybody's tired. Certainly don't want to let emotion rule any decisions on your end or my end. So I would ask respectfully to the board that we don't do that. We do want to see this project go. Of course we do. And, give Scott and I an opportunity to take this back and kick it around again and see what we can come up with. The first couple buildings, we've gone on this project from everything from taking all of it down to keeping the first 2 buildings and renovating. And, we've just been through this so many times. I mean, we'll have to take a hard look at 40 and 50 and see what we can do and maybe make some changes that can work. But, we still have to meet the fire department's needs and the affordable housing needs and the number of units needs and to make a project that's financeable.
But a lot of that, but a lot of that is up for debate, right? The 25% affordable, we would love, but if you come to us with transparency and you give us data where you show us that you can only do 10%, and you indicate that that's what you need to do for flexibility, let's have that discussion. Let's stop
Okay.
having these meetings where nothing changes. And you just keep
And I wanna-
saying, well, this has
and I
been
wanna-
going on.
And I want to reiterate that, yeah, the first time I saw this project was a combination planning board, select board meeting, which is a long time ago.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember when. And I think actually between that meeting and maybe the next one is really the only significant change I saw in the project. And that was because there was some kind of floor added to one of the first two buildings, maybe both of them. There was a gym on top, the roof was taken off, it was done differently. And then the next iteration, it wasn't, because of comments from the select board. These went back to very traditional buildings in their existing condition. And that really was the last significant change. So in my view, there haven't been, the changes have been fairly superficial changes, skin deep, let's say. And so maybe we just have a different perspective on that, but it wasn't the kind of level of changes that I think were necessary given the comments coming out of not only those meetings, but the public forums that we had and things like that, that they were looking for something bigger, and that something bigger just, it just didn't happen. So they might seem like significant changes, but really the plan looks exactly like this. At least in my memory, it looks exactly like the first time I saw it.
Well, don't forget, Trish, halfway through the process, there was a big change that would not allow us to go higher. So, we could have had another floor, and that certainly opened up a lot of opportunity to make some very significant changes. So again, constraints have been coming at us, and it makes it difficult. And I appreciated your comments and Marcelo's comments and the sketches that came up with. I thought they were really cool. But in fact, those ideas, at least from my perspective as a layman, I'm not an architect, didn't really seem to work with the overall. So, I have an architect on my team that's done a very good job, I feel, and laid it out, and with the constraints that we have, to something that can work. And we have two architects on the board who have laid out also some very good ideas as well. It's not that we don't like them and I'm just going to go against them for the sake of going against them. It's not that at all. We want to make this work for everybody. So again, I think maybe it's best we just give us a chance, give us an opportunity to take this back again, kick it around. Maybe Scott and I will also bring in somebody else on our side for a fresh set of eyes and see what we can come up with. So I would ask for a continuance at this point, and let's get on the next agenda maybe in a month from now, and give us an opportunity to maybe come back with a couple significant ideas.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, I would love something to happen at this site. It's an eyesore from my personal perspective, and an amazing opportunity, but it's something you get to do once, and it has to be right to move forward. It can't be just, well, it's the best we could do. I think it has to hit a higher mark than that. So
Can I
All right,
ask?
let us have another go at that, and I respect that.
okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question of Peter? So the bylaws are such that, there's a limit on how many floors, there's a limit on certain things on this site. In theory, could a special permit application say, we're going to respect the height requirements, but we would like some type of variance here or there? Is that in theory plausible?
That's a great question.
It's a great question. Yeah.
That would open up such a much bigger door for us.
Yeah.
I'm
that was
asking,
an
yeah,
option.
and Peter, you don't have to answer that question on the spot. But the reason I bring that up is again, I feel like we need an intervention. If this project cannot pass the majority vote as is, and we keep hitting our heads against the wall, maybe we need to have a broader conversation about what kind of project can we envision here that currently is not consistent with our bylaws, and what do we need to do as a community to plan better for the future. Like I said, there's a comprehensive plan process. Maybe this project needs to be withdrawn until we reconsider our bylaws and what we're trying to create in Ashland. That's kind of where I'm going with that. And I feel like we need a broader conversation beyond just the next meeting, so that if we continue to hit this wall, we have a creative solution for the long term, because clearly Rich is a community member in a sense that he owns this building and he has an interest in developing it. And if we can't figure this out, we need to start thinking about what do we need to do as a community if we want this to be developed.
Right.
I think your words
that's true.
are great. I think those are great words to speak. And I agree. Rich is a member of the community. I've gotten to know Rich over this application, and we got to trust each other on what's going on. I'll look into that question regarding the height of the buildings. Obviously, as Anna, I think you were on the board, and as Trish very well knows and remembers, we did review and edit the zoning bylaws back in about 2001. And we did put in that cap at 35 feet. And then there was a special permit to go above that. But
And that's
I
kind of
think-
where I'm heading. And I mean,
Mhm.
my other thought is like, we brainstormed about a hotel, right? And the applicant was like, well, you can't do a hotel on this site. And I started looking at the bylaws, and there's some gray area. But let's say you come back to us and it's viable. Why can't we have a discussion about a potential hotel here? Maybe not now, maybe not with this application, but 2 years from now. So to me,
Well,
this is a
so-
broader
Right,
conversation.
so let's, I
Right,
think
so
this is-
excuse me though, I have to interrupt. So I mean, I would think though, withdrawing the application is almost a death sentence, because the moratorium on building is gonna then kick in. So I really think we need to try to figure it out sooner than later and during the process while it's still open, because if I withdraw, that could be the end of it. And clearly none of us want that. I mean, that is a resounding sentiment. So I do think that we need to keep it going forward. I think Anna, that was an awesome question to Peter, and Peter, maybe you can, take a deeper dive into that and find out if there's any way that there could be some relief given on the height, because that truly takes away one of our major constraints. And if we can add a floor, even if it's on, 2 of the buildings, and get our unit count up that way, then we could really talk about, some reconfiguration and maybe even implementing, some of the designs that you guys were kicking around at the design meeting that we had. It's a big constraint, and that's why we've been so stuck with this footprint, because that's what it boils down to. We have to make a major change to make the board happy, and it's going to involve a footprint. Well, if we can't go higher, where do we go? So I would love to see if there's any way that that's a possibility right now in the near future while we're still on the docket.
all right. So on that note, why don't we, where can we continue this to where when you come back, we'll be able to have a productive conversation, I guess, one way or another.
Yeah, probably
Next
need
time is
3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. Could we get on the next
23rd?
meeting that's in a month from now?
February.
Yeah, we have excuse me. Our next meetings are February, that'll be February 23rd, and then we're looking at March 9th. But the 23rd obviously is like about a month from that, is a month out. So we can
Yeah.
always say a month out and then reassess at that point and then kind of
Yep.
go from there.
Yeah, that'd be good if we could, pencil us in on the 23rd, and we'll do our best to stick to that. And in the meantime, Scott and I have some work to do, and Peter, you and I have some work to do.
Yes. Yeah, and I will look into that issue, obviously, about the height. And then kind of go from there.
So I will make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 10 to 60 Main Street until the meeting on February 23rd. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. And a roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Plan I.
And Trisha Kendall, I. So we're continuing to February 23rd. We'll see where we are at that point.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
So obviously, I think everything else on the agenda, besides the next two items, which we need to do, can wait. I don't think there's anything going to be anything that we need to do in issues 5 through 8. And these two things I think should go quickly. Village at Clocktown, the preliminary subdivision. Peter, do you just need to bring that up?
Yep.
I guess I need to first, while you're doing that, I will say that the Village of America's Phase 8 preliminary subdivision is being continued. When we were looking to continue that too, Peter?
Just hold on a sec.
No, don't bring up that one because we don't need to see it.
Yeah, I am not. They're requesting a continuance until February 9th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So February 9th, and it may go away before then, is what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this one has a possibility of going away before then.
All right, so I will make a motion to continue Village of the Americas Phase 8.
Excuse me, they requested it to March 9th, but it's most likely gonna go away before then.
Oh, March 9th is even better. Love it.
Okay.
So we're continuing it until March 9th. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And a roll call vote?
Amanda Chesnitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
Kevin McLean, I.
And Trisha Kendall, aye. That is continued until the spring. Village at Clocktown preliminary subdivision, 58 Exchange Street. This was the
Didn't we vote on that last time around?
You did, and that is just a decision. I sent that out to everybody on Friday.
Yeah.
oh yes.
Yeah.
So what do we need to do with the decision?
It's just we have to come and we have to sign it.
Oh, okay.
Did I already sign that one, Peter?
No one has signed those, and I thank everybody for dealing with the signatures of.
So we
all
just need to
those
come in
decisions.
and sign. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
So and that was just that was just sent out
That
recently.
was just sent out. Trisha, you haven't. No one signed this one
Okay,
yet.
no one signed it, and it's obviously very basic preliminary site division subdivision.
Very
I can look through
basic.
it.
Yep.
Okay,
Very basic. And then the second one is Albert Ray Drive T-Mobile, which
Okay.
was boilerplate. From
identical to the other ones that
identical-
we've done, which
Correct.
was just replacing the heads, no new carrier, just
No
replacing.
new carrier modification. Yep.
So again, we need to show up and sign those two.
Or just let me know and I'll swing it by your house and drop it in your
I'll
mailbox.
text you tomorrow.
Whatever
I'm in
works
Boland
best.
Road in Dubuque, Iowa.
I'm gonna FedEx it to you.
But
Probably
can
FedEx to
it,
you would be best.
can it wait until next Wednesday when you guys are open until later?
We'll take care of it.
All right.
In the
so
meantime, I'll most likely FedEx it out to Trisha and then try to get that back as soon
Okay.
as possible.
That's fine. I had forgotten actually that we already voted on these things. I thought we still needed to do that.
No. Trisha, if you could just email me the address yet again,
Yep,
and I
we'll
will
do.
put that into FedEx tomorrow. And so I
Okay.
can get that back in as soon as possible.
All right, I'll do that as soon as I get done here.
Okay.
Yeah, so is there anything on this list then, given that we don't have to do that anyone needs to?
Yeah, we gotta get the Trails Committee on the docket.
Okay,
They did
Charles-
email us and that they did email us
Yeah.
and I agree, Kate, and thank you for bringing that up.
can you look at the first available slot that would work for that, Peter? I mean, it
Yep.
could be February 9th or, yeah, that would be our next meeting. If it doesn't look too packed, we could,
You know what? Things are starting to loosen up.
okay.
I don't want to say it out loud. I'm gonna.
Yeah,
I'll
what are
probably,
you thinking, Peter? Don't say
you
it.
know, knocking on wood, but
So look at the February 9th agenda and see if it can find a home there. Okay,
Okay.
as long as the the appropriate people can make that meeting, obviously, we'll see. Otherwise, we can
Mhm.
maybe put it on the 23rd, though that might get a little busy. I'd say the only other thing on here is Sustainability Committee, Matt Marshquist and I can't remember a new person on the Sustainability Committee that I don't know are going to be the two people. For the checklist on the Design Review Committee, it's going to be Kathy Rooney and Ujwala Poniker. And has anyone given that thought about filling in that seat? I anticipate it will be, Matt and I anticipate it will be maybe 3 meetings of 90 minutes each, and then some homework adding to a checklist or editing a checklist, and then that task should be done. Is there anyone interested? I know you've been on the Sustainability Committee, Anna, but I know you're comprehensive planning now.
I mean, if no one else volunteers, I'll see what I can do.
No, Tricia, I mentioned that I'd be happy to help. I have a lot of scheduling constraints these days.
Okay. Yep.
So with that caveat, if I don't know if are they supposed to be remote meetings or in person?
I think they'll likely be remote, just for ease.
Okay,
You know?
because if I can make it, I'm happy to help, but with the understanding that my schedule these days is ridiculous.
Why don't I put, if you're willing, I'll put Anna and Marcelo on that, and I will fill in if either one of you can't make it. Like I'll
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. I can see
Yeah.
myself making a couple of meetings, but it might be hard for me if they're 90 minutes each, 3
Yeah.
times. That might be a little rash for me. I can do like an hour, 45 minutes. I think 90 will push it for me.
yeah, and that could be, so, and we could ask for them to be shorter, but if either one of you cannot make it for any reason, I should be able to jump in. My evenings are,
Do they really need two of us? It seems like,
we just thought it'd be a good number. So even if,
Yeah.
maybe only I will be attending sometime.
yeah, I
but-
mean, I was gonna say, I trust Marcella's judgment. I trust
Yeah.
your judgment. I think we can create a checklist without having 2 of us there. I think that we have the ability to bring it back to the board for input. I feel like we're kind of overthinking this. I think if one of us can be there, we can fill this in and get feedback from the board at the next meeting and get it done. Like, let's not overthink this.
I agree.
Yeah.
So we'll just get the job done and we'll work with that plan. And if I need to fill in on all the meetings, I will, but at least we'll have some other voices.
Give them
on-
3 names and one of us will show up.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that list that's essential?
I think we're good. I know under other is comprehensive plan. Kate and I don't have any update other than the fact that the comprehensive plan, the leadership committee, if you will, is trying to begin recruiting for the steering committee. And
Okay.
so I believe Brandy and Michael or someone is working on creating kind of a pamphlet of what that would be, and that would go out to the public. And that's kind of where we are. And then the request for the consultant is being drafted as well, the RFP. So the comprehensive plan work is moving along nicely.
All right. Good to hear.
Just one quick note, sorry to hold you up, but the continuance they requested regarding the preliminary subdivision was not March 9th, but February 9th. Okay,
So what do we need to do there to correct to February 9th?
I am just gonna, I'm gonna say revote it and say we accept the continuance till February 9th as amended.
Okay. February 9th. Need a second.
Second,
Roll call vote.
Anna Tesmanitsky, aye.
Marcelo Hona, aye.
Catherine Jersey, aye.
McLean, aye.
Trisha Kendall, aye. There you have it. Motion to adjourn. Second.
Second,
Oh, Peter, do you need something else?
aye.
All right.
11:30, world
We
record.
already do a roll call vote? We'll
Oh,
just-
that we did. But
Aye.
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 All right. We're all good. Thanks, everybody.
All right, we'll be in touch. Have a
Good
good
night.
weekend.
Sweet dreams.
guys.